Thank you for listening to this episode.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @Prestigious_pod. And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Today, I'm joined by Jimi Okubanjo, an inspiring leader whose work helps professionals reclaim joy, confidence, and resilience in their careers, even when facing systematic challenges. Whether you're battling burnout, navigating workplace bias, or searching for more sustainable career paths, Jimi's insights are here to help you thrive. So let's dive in. Jimi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
So, Jimi, why should somebody listen to today's conversation?
I don't think people should do anything. I'm not a big fan of people shitting on themselves and putting themselves under any pressure. But I think one of the takeaways, what one might gain or want to explore is if the thought of going to work is making you, just filling you with dread, anxiety, making indifference, disengagement, making you hate yourself, your life. If that Sunday night blues is actually turning into a Sunday night panic attack or insomnia, where it's just you can't see any way out of it, I think this may be a benefit. This conversation might be of help, because one of the things that I definitely believe in with the work we do at the Rise Firebird and with the movie we made is to really shine a light on why some people are really, really struggling with their mental well-being in the workplace, and why a lot of it isn't really their fault. But still in that kind of imperfect setting, in an imperfect workplace, like many of us work, what can you do to make it a safer place for you when your employer cannot or will not change? And there isn't a lot of information really shared on what you can do. When I was going through the struggle myself in my own career, the advice out there had the massive assumption that your employer would meet you at least partway, would do quote unquote their job. And I have found the vast majority of my clients, from the research I've been reading, that is not the situation with most employers. Most employers aren't able to. I'm not judging them. They're not bad people, but many employers just can't, for various reasons, make the change and adjustments to make the workplace safe for you. And so we need to have the conversation from that standpoint. What do you do to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself healthy in a modern workplace?
Very good. So, Jimi, can you share a little bit about your personal journey and what inspired you to create the Firebird Resilience Program?
So I worked in management consulting and operations management for several decades. I worked, so my specialty ended up being engineering portfolio excellence. So basically, how do engineering companies deliver their projects, their hundreds of thousands of complex projects? How do we get them delivering them on time, in full, to quality, and under budget? That was what I ended up. That's the one thing I probably know more than anything else, technically, as my skill set. I discovered through my career, though, that as much as I enjoyed doing that work, it became harder and harder and harder to be taken seriously the more senior I got. And I had a job where I was able to travel to 14 countries, 4 continents. I delivered over $250 million in benefits to engineering organizations, in terms of greater productivity, efficiency, productivity, which was signed off by their CFOs. So it wasn't just stuff that we claimed. There was an agreement on how much we had saved, or helped them produce more. And I loved the work. It was really exciting to do. But I had gotten so used to just kind of pushing through a lot of the problematic areas of it, because I could just outwork it. And the challenge is you get to a certain level of seniority where you just can't outwork the problems. I can't just make it a weekend and show them I'm right, because I've got to do 200 people's work, and that's not possible. I ended up in a division where I had I had that I had accountability for over 2,000 projects, and they would not give me an accountant or an HR person um, committed to that. And so, how do you oversee 2,000 projects without an accountant and without an HR person to help with the personnel issues? They just wouldn't do it, and not for lack of, I went and I asked again, and I made the case, and it was just like the answer was no, and it continued to be no. Um, and I say this in the sense that I just thought that was normal. You just try to find a way to work around that. But that just was impossible. So I ended up getting to a point of real despondency in my career, and I couldn't understand why. I had a conversation where a senior leader had told me, an open company, that they could have hired a white man to do my job. And again, I took that as constructive feedback. Okay, how do I action that? And it was one of the things where I realized I couldn't. There's nothing I couldn't action that. And sometime after that, I left the corporate world. But I was devastated and hard, and I was devastated, Chris. I loved the work I did, and I knew that I was good. I believed I was good at it, but upon leaving the corporate world, I really felt I wasn't competent anymore, and that led me really into a period of in acute sadness and frustration and just despair. But ultimately led me into a space of hearing a lot more stories, talking to a lot more people about what was going on with no clear plan in mind. And I eventually produced a feature-length movie called The Rise Firebird, which explores why so many people, so many, traditionally overlooked professionals are exiting the corporate world, what that looks like for them and what their lives look like now. And that was really the first step, just in terms of just gathering these stories to see what other people were saying, because I really just felt it was me for a very long time. But this was just something I was dealing with, and clearly I was just weak, and I wasn't man enough to to be in those spaces. I wasn't tough enough. But realizing that a wide range of people were and are still struggling with similar issues in the modern workplace in the West, um, was a very, on one hand, vindicating revelation from my film work, but also really devastating, because I really didn't expect it to be this fast. And this ubiquitous is like the best kept secret for a lot of people, is how much certain types of people are struggling. And then we see this them leaving. So we produced a documentary, won some awards, did a TED talk, quite a lot of activity around taking the film into a lot of organizations, having dozens and tons, just over 100 different kinds of conversations in companies and podcasts and articles about the film and about the issues in the workplace. And what led us to now kick off a Firebird resiliency program was, what was the question of, now that we've shared these stories, how do we help people stay in? How do we use the stories, help people reframe that situation so they don't resign purely out of shame or humiliation or whatever other reasons that really led a lot of us to exit.
Okay, so a couple questions there. You said that it got tougher as you got higher up. Why do you think that was?
I can't speak for, I can give some hypotheses, and I'm not speaking for the individuals involved because I don't know them, their personal lives that much. But I would say that, like, one reason really is experiencing exposure of senior leaders. So an example, if you were to go to the international, Chris and Jimmy Chicken Shack, the staff that work at the actual storefront probably have a lot more experience working with people from a wide range of backgrounds, a lot more than the senior leaders who work in the head office in New York. And so you go into the New York office, and I can be mistaken, as I have been, for the cleaner, because they're just not used to that, and the leaders themselves aren't used to that. They haven't had the trial and error of saying silly things and being called on it, and being really confronted by customers who get really upset because, why did you say that? They just think it's truly a joke because they can joke about that in their circle, and it's okay. It's okay to have those jokes within their own space because they're all very, very homogenous, or there's so few people of color that you can just say, or few women or women of color, that when someone does say it, you can just say they're being sensitive, versus customer after customer after customer after supplier after, like, you get a barrage of this. You can recognize, okay, this is not something I should be saying or doing or thinking or such. I just feel there's probably that lack of experience with more senior people, because they just haven't had to deal with having to accommodate someone whose needs are different from theirs, or someone who appears differently from theirs. There's a lot of, and there continues to be protection. And if someone then leaves, it's more like, yes, no, their fault, not us, the leadership team. It's the person who couldn't get that. I also don't think that it's, the more senior you get, the more closer you get to what really matters for an organization. And for many companies, the well-being of a small portion of their employees, isn't a driving force for their business. It's a line item. They can see, okay, 30 people are upset out of our 500. We can replace those 30. It becomes more about numbers versus experience of a smaller group. If everybody else is pretty much happy, they can just go and find, on their bike and find something else. They don't really get too caught up in that, because, again, as a leader told me, we've got more important things to worry about, Jimmy, than whether or not people like you are happy at work. We have to deal with leadership and culture and business.
And
I
so
don't
as you got higher up, you were bumping shoulders with these people that were more closed off in their views, and because you didn't fit the type of person that they were hoping would show up on that given day, that made it harder for them and you to interact with each other, because they were closed off and they weren't accepting to any of your ideas or influence because you're a Black woman, essentially.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say, who knows, right? But I think only they would know that. But it wasn't just about accepting my views, but even things like reducing resources. So I would go on vacation. I went on vacation, and the head of HR reorganized my entire division when I was away, and I was a COO. And I went away, and they reorganized my organization without consulting me. And that's like that would not even be done with any of the other gentlemen if they went away. But they said they didn't want to bother me when I was on vacation. And that's gas. I mean, that just makes no sense. Like, why would you even try and do that when I wasn't here? Why do you think that's even helpful for me not to be consulted? And then whether or not, and I didn't have I didn't have a dedicated HR person. It was left to me while running my full-time job to kind of figure out what exactly they had done while I was gone. Yeah. And it hadn't been helpful. So these are the kind of things that where it is, whether it's sabotage or it's just, they just don't even think, well, of course Jimmy won't mind, but Dominic, if we did that, Dominic, he would completely lose his mind. So we won't do it, Dominic, but for Jimmy, we can do that. We can take away her team. We can do all these kinds of things. We can ask her to make every single person of color in her division redundant, and that not be a problem. And by name, but literally list them by name, make all of them redundant, and everybody over 75. And it's like, those are the kind of things where, and me having an issue with that, like, I think it's just being a bit strange. So it was, it would have been okay if you didn't like me. Because you know what? I can live with not being liked. It's not great. I like being liked, but I can live with that. But it was really the making it impossible to do my work. And even when so despite that, getting the results and getting the numbers, like the financial director saying, yes, we brought in this much in benefits or this much in revenue, and it's saying, no, that money that the CFO said you brought in doesn't count. Like that's not part, like, but yeah, it doesn't count. Like, so actually you've got zero. So this kind of like Hollywood accounting in engineering spaces comes into that. But there are other things like, being a senior person and being asked to serve chocolate biscuits. Not even, they say women are often asked to take notes. I was asked to just serve chocolate biscuits, while people 3 or 4 levels below me were told to run meetings. Not because of any performance issue. They were like, that's just the way they want it. Never really explained why. That was the situation. But that happened. And so I feel like it's not as straightforward as, people don't take your ideas seriously. it can manifest in so many ways. I've had clients where it's been sexual assault, it's been sexual harassment, it's been verbal abuse, physical intimidation, physical threat. It's a wide range of things that begin to occur at that senior level, which they just say they're just jokes. But they're just like, no, you're being too sensitive. But actually, what you said in some parts of the country, could be, there could be prosecution for that in terms of it being a crime, like what you're actually saying you want to do. But it's quite. I think it's quite normal, especially in my space and the work I do in STEM. And the reality for a lot of us is when we're told to use humor to laugh it off, or to document it, or to report it, or to challenge it, and what we find is a lot of retaliation. I've worked with hundreds of STEM leaders, and the only ones I know that have been fired have been women of color, and not for gross misconduct, not for embezzling. It's been just for they can't even, because of attitude, that have been walked off site for that. So I've never haven't heard of a gentleman fired for sexual harassment, sexual assault. I've not heard of someone fired for discrimination or for bullying, but I find the people I know that have lost their jobs in STEM, have been terminated, have been women of color, not because of poor performance. It's just been just the wrong kind of attitude. So retaliation. So when we ask people to speak up, it's really important to understand that retaliation is also real for a lot of people. And so it's not them not speaking up isn't because they're stupid or they're cowards or they don't know who they are. It's like they're quite smart. They look around actually what the consequences can be for certain people.
Well, I want to say that I mean, not that I have any impact on this or whatever, but I feel I'm sorry that was the way that you have been treated, and the vast number of people that you are helping now that are going through those same type of things that you are, or that you have been doing. So thank you. Sorry that happened to you, but thank you for being the person to take charge and to combat that. And the other thing I want to ask is, you said you have a lot of high level people that are getting to the high levels and they're leaving because they're battling this type of information and this type of treatment at work. What type of things do you do with those clients to help in that regard to kind of balance or offset that? Is it like trying to find different places to work for? You have a list of people, hey, listen, these teams over here, they are much more accepting, and stay away from these companies. Is it kind of that, or what type of work is it?
So the core for us, there are probably two key pieces. We want to build adaptive resilience versus toxic resilience, and to grow their self-compassion so they can stay in their careers longer. So practically, what does that mean? So I think of toxic resiliency versus adaptive resiliency as if I'm going to Chris's house to serve my world-class lemonade. It's the only thing I cook. I'm not a cook, but this is the one thing I can make is my world-class lemonade. And so I come over and I'm coming to your house and I get on the street and I see a massive semi-truck driving on the sidewalk right toward me. Toxic resilience would say, I stay on the street. I stay firm. I don't waver. I keep going. Determination. Winners don't quit, quitters don't win. And I'm going to go head to head, and may the best, entity survive. Toxic resilience, like, keep going. Yeah, I'm thinking, stop the thinking, shake you. I, the tiger. Adaptive resilience will tell me, this semi-truck is probably going to hit somebody. I might kill somebody. So I have to think, what can I do? So I could step back off the street, let the truck pass, call the police. I could take a different route. I could go to a different grocery store and buy the lemons. I could go to a neighbor and borrow lemons. I may just go see my friend Chris without any lemons, and we'll just, hang out, because, that's more important. But you have to decide when you're seeing these as obstacles come, how you're going to maneuver. And even for some of us, adaptive resiliency can look like going backwards or standing still or a lateral move. And a lot of my clients are overachievers. So the notion of staying still, of stepping back, stepping to the side, feels like immense and total failure. for an overachiever. They're already overqualified. They're already overexperienced. And so the shame can come down hard and they'll beat themselves up. I had a chat with a woman recently and she had confessed to me that, Jimmy, I don't feel very productive at work. And I'd asked her, why do you say that? I just find I'm just not really, I'm kind of like, just not really putting my whole effort into my job anymore. And I asked her, okay, so tell me, what does that actually mean? So you're done in like half the week, or so yeah, about halfway through the week, I'm just like I'm spent. And I now asked her, are you getting all of your deliverables done? Are you doing what you were hired to do? You're paid a salary. Are you delivering? Yeah, I'm getting all my stuff done in 3 days. And I remember you telling me, friend, you applied for a job 2 levels senior to the one they gave you. I said, yeah, I did. And they gave you a job 2 levels lower. Yeah. So I think that for me, what I hear is you were overqualified for this job. You knew that they knew that they hired you. You're getting it done in less time because you can do this job in your sleep. They're like, yeah. And so now you're feeling bad because you are actually really too good for this job. So toxic resiliency would be trying to find ways to fill it so she'd be fully productive all the time, but she's getting the work done. So you now have the option with I feel 2 days left in the week to ask yourself, how could you be of best value to yourself and to your company with these 2 days of work? That could be working your PhD, mentoring some other employees, learning another, doing some conferences, going to the marketing department and offering to go on some of their events. You could find a way to use that time to grow yourself, to serve yourself and your company, because it's still company time. But you don't have to fill it with busy work and guilt and shame, because you already said when you applied for this job, you want a job 2 levels higher than this, which is not what they're giving you. But she had been beating herself up so much about this and feeling ashamed that she was competent. And so the self-compassion piece is really important, is really reframing and talking to ourselves kindly when we face obstacles, looking for the truth, a higher truth in that situation, and not letting the headlines about quiet quitting or whatever derail us. For her, it's impossible, like quiet quitting. It's impossible for her to quiet quit. She gets her job done at 6% of the time. She's just really that good. And a lot of my clients fall into that category. They're overqualified already for the role. They're able to do it and they have extra time and they feel guilty about, I'm just not. Well, how can you? If they sent me to grade school and asked me to color, I would get all my coloring done probably in the first day. And filling my day up with more coloring isn't going to make me feel fulfilled or excited about being there. I've done what you need me to do. I need to find something else that will fill me the next 4 days while I'm grade 3. And the more coloring I do, the more frustrating I'm going to feel. But a lot of us don't think of it in that terms, and we're not told to do that. And a lot of our employers and bosses don't believe we're that competent and we've got to the work that much. So it's really about finding a way that you can, again, be of service to your employer. I'm not saying go to Vegas for 2 days a week unless your contract allows that, but there could be a way for you to do something that would be of service. And even that is a slippery. It has to be carefully done, because you can't go and tell your boss, I want to understudy the CEO my 2 days a week. They'd be like, what? That could result in retaliation. So it's really about thinking about what's a careful way that you can use those 2 days. And it could be like going to an MBA or a PhD or write papers or, do some investigations for various departments that they want your support. So, but the compassion piece is important because overachievers, they use their critical inner voice. We use it to drive us. And it's worked to a point, but now it's kind of on steroids, where it's just in many ways evil. And whatever horrible things we get told at work, our critical inner voice replays that. But it adds soprano, tenor, bass, and a whole orchestral section and a remix. So we're constantly hearing an even worse version of what actually happened, because we think on some level it's going to help us kind of get through the other side, as it did helping us pass, grade 10 algebra. but it's not, but this isn't grade 10 algebra. And so just saying yourself, come on, you can do it. Why are you being so lazy? Yeah, that you pick up a text that might work when you were 16 or 17 to pick up a textbook and study for algebra, but you're like 47 and the issues are much more complicated now. And it's not, you don't pick up the book. There's so many factors you can't really control. So that compassion piece is a big part for us. So the tools and the framework we share with the program is really getting them to interrupt the critical inner voice and getting them to look for adaptive resilient strategies where they currently are and separate themselves from the need for external validation from their boss or company.
Okay, so that explanation of adaptive resilience and toxic resilience, that's a new concept to me, but what a wild way to think about that, and such a remarkable way too, because a lot of times when you're told to be, just be resilient, it's just you basically grit your teeth and go through it anyways. But that's not necessarily a very good way to think about that, because what is the product of that? Well, you are miserable in your day-to-day doing whatever it is because you're told just to grit your teeth, be resilient, get through to the other side, but the other side is just the same stuff over and over again. So having some tact essentially in your approach to resilience is crucial for that, because otherwise you are just miserable throughout whatever it is that you're going through, and you hope that it's going to be better on the other side, but the other side is probably going to be worse, if not more of the same at the best. So be tactful in your way. If a semi truck is coming down the road, don't keep walking towards it, move out of the way. Right. What a remarkable way to think about that. And the next piece I thought was really interesting too is when challenges come up. Okay, let me ask this first before I assume this. Do you have some sort of kind of preset, if this negative things happen, do this instead, and this negative things happen, do this instead? So they kind of have thought out steps to challenges that might and probably will happen.
So we have a couple tools. So we have an adaptive resilience toolkit, and it's about a dozen tools, and they're not as prescriptive as if you go to the freezer and Jeff takes your truffle pizza, do X, Y, and Z. But we have a tool called the crisis after action, and what we do with our clients is we ask them to before right now when things are good, actually do some planning work, in the sense of if something really acutely difficult happens, who are 3 to 5 people you're going to call? Let them know you're going to call them. Get some agreement that they're part of your crisis after action. Think of a quiet place you can go at work or at home if you work from home, and maybe your car. It could be the bathroom at work. It could be the coffee shop bathroom across the street. Where can you go and be by yourself if possible? Think about some music or an audio or a video or a few of those that really can reconnect you with who you are. So you list all this out right now. A passage, a reading, scripture, prayer, whatever it is, something written. So when that inevitably happens, you have your crisis after action kit, and you go through those steps to at least kind of help you get some perspective. So this is this example of one of the tools we have. Another thing that we're very keen about in our framework is holistic career planning. So many of us put together a career plan, which is in 5 years, I want to be the CEO of the world. I want to have 5 PhDs. I want to be the regional manager of sales, and I want to have a P&L of $25 million. We have this kind of target. I want to have this certificate, this qualification, this license, and such. So these cover mainly IQ and also EQ in terms of career plans. However, what we don't put in our career plans are what I call the resilience coach, RQ, resilience coaching. What do I want to be able to deal with in 5 years? I want to be able to be publicly humiliated and not lose myself in myself. I want to be able to be able to work in an organization where my boundaries are honored. These are the things that need to be on that career plan. And then also, what do I need to put in place to be able to achieve in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? I may need to go to therapy every week for the next 5 years. I may have to go to, a retreat every quarter. I might have to. So these are the things you now start putting in place. I need 3 ride or die friends who I connect with every single month, who I'm bringing on this journey. So then in 5 years' time, when I become that regional manager and it is just, everyone is crazy, my ride or dies, I can call them and they can say, yes, they are crazy. Here is the holy water, just start sprinkling it on the screen, and whatever demons are there will fully. And so you can start putting that in place now, so that in 5 years, when you become regional director or senior VP or CEO, you have that network. Because I do find with people who stay in the game longer, they just intuitively have that, or they knew to put it in. But overachievers over-index on the IQ and on the EQ. And emotional intelligence, I would argue, does nothing for resilience, because it's all about how I'm managing other people's emotions, how I'm showing up for that person who makes that problematic Gordon, how I use humor to deflect someone, threatening to hit me. That's all emotional intelligence, emotional quotient. But that's depleting. It's continually depleting if I don't have a way to build my own inner resilience. So for us, the toolkits we have are really around, they're not for specific scenarios, like if again, someone steals your pizza, but when this kind of shock to your system happens, you can do this. And also, if you're planning to, if where you're trying to get to in 5 years, what resilience infrastructure do you need to have in place, and how do you start building that proactively now?
Okay, so a couple things there that I really like. Having that opportunity to kind of think about challenges, future challenges, and then ways to overcome them is immensely helpful on a couple levels, because what that does is that gives that person an opportunity to think through, how bad do I want this? How much am I going to work for this? And if these problems, if these challenges come up, what am I going to do to overcome them? Now, the likelihood of those exact things happening are pretty low, but if you have an idea of a game plan of what it could look like if something like this happened, then you just go back to your game plan and play that out. Okay, great, this happened. All right, I already have a plan in place for this. Do this if this happens. Call these people, talk to these people. So that is super helpful. But on top of that, overlaid with a vision of where you want the goal of your job to be, what direction do you want it to be going? So those two things, I think, are connected, because you have to, in goal setting, right? We talk about goal setting a lot, and you think that you have a linear line, start from down here, and then you draw a straight diagonal line up to where your goal is. But in reality, that is not a straight line. It's like it's a wave, up and down, and eventually maybe you get there if you can withstand the lows. But if you don't have a plan in place, some ideas, some opportunity to think about the challenges that are going to arise, and then what to do to overcome those challenges, when those challenges happen, you check out. So having a plan in place for those lows will get you back up to that high, so that you can enact that vision, that goal that you have in place, to see it through to the other side. Because when those challenges happen, and we all know life happens, challenges are going to happen. That's a part of life. Life is like trying to go blindfolded through a maze of doors, and you don't know which one is open, which one's not. And and there's booby traps all over, and you don't know, right? You're blindfolded. So having an idea to think about what to do in those lows, the bottom of that wave, to make it to the top, and then eventually you can see your vision through, is so helpful. And I really like the phrase, I want to be able, and then fill in whatever it is, because then what that does is that sets that vision, that goal. It's like an affirmation, a future affirmation. I want to be able, boom, 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 boom. Right? And so that sets your mind in a place that you are accepting of those things. And then probably what that does is that gives you an opportunity to do a little bit of exposure therapy. So you do a little, I want to be able to do this in 5 years. So I need to be able to do this now, today, because I want to be way better than this in 5 years from now. So you do a little bit of exposure. Okay, great. Oh, that was actually not as bad as I thought. Or, man, that was terrible. And then you do a little bit more. And then by the time you get to that 5 years, you're like, oh man, I can do this no problem, because I took the steps to put that in place. Hey everyone, it's Chris Bean here from the Prestigious Initiative. If you're looking to level up your life and unlock your full potential, I've got some exciting news for you. My recent guest, Joel Gandara, has an incredible program called 31 Days to Become a Better Man. Joel has packed years of life-changing insights into this easy-to-read book, guaranteed to help you rethink your shortcomings and redefine what it means to be a man in today's world. But that's not all. Joel also offers powerful one-on-one sessions and group classes to guide you on your journey. And he has a special offer for the Prestigious Initiative listeners. You can get $19.99 off the program when you use code PRESTIGIOUS at checkout. Don't wait. Take your first steps towards becoming the best version of yourself today. Visit 31dailychallenges.com and use the code PRESTIGIOUS for your discount. And now back to the show.
So I would a bit of a caveat there, because when it comes to abuse, and for some people, what they're being exposed to is actually abuse. Not constantly being exposed to abuse doesn't necessarily make you stronger. And in fact, we are there are a few cases, not clients of mine, where women have actually either have attempted suicide or actually taken their lives because of what they're going through at work. So when I gave an example of your holistic plan may need to include getting professional help every single week, so you actually really have the toolkit, because it may be actually this employer is so bad that I cannot be here, and there's no value in trying to be in this organization, because the only outcome here is going to be my life. And that's a big reason why so many underrepresented professionals leave STEM mid-career. So we have the skill gap in certain pockets of the sciences and engineering space, especially seasoned people. And a lot of people are walking away from their careers with all their experiences, because what they're concerned about is the fact they want to be alive. They want to be alive, and they're choosing life over staying in that workplace. And I do want to say this in a sense, because I don't want anyone to listen and feel, okay, so I'm having suicide ideations, I'm stressed, I'm crying, or my partner, he's not getting out of bed for 3 weeks. He comes home, he's just angry, he's drinking, he's doing drugs. We can come up with a plan. No. It's okay. The adaptive resilience thing to do and the self-compassion thing to do may be to look for somewhere else where you can thrive. And that setback may be leaving your employer. And also with the goals, there may be something there for us in redefining what success really means. I may want to be a CEO, but why? Why do you want to be CEO of this corporation? And it may be because I want the accolades, I want the respect, I want the money. Okay, which one do you really want? I want the respect. Well, you could do that. There are other ways for you to get some level of respect without being a CEO of that company. And there are other companies where you could be CEO of. If you want the money, there could be other ways for you to think about, okay, how do you get I spoke to a financial advisor recently about, wealth generation. And she was like, yeah, there's so many things. You could be earning more than your boss's boss if you have a view about your own investment portfolio. So if it's the money, then there could be other ways around it. So what really is success for us? Because if we can have our own definition of success, we can also, that critical inner voice, that drives us to want something that's not being given to us. We want to date, I want to date Tim Jackson Brown because he's just so great. And no matter, I'm going to keep on hoping, at some point it's not good for me. It's not good for Tim if I keep on hoping because he's married, got 3 kids. I don't care. I'm still holding out that someday he's going to leave his wife and his kids and be with me. It can feel that way sometimes. We get so hyper fixated and we don't allow life to just life. We don't know what for many of us. And while it's good to have a trajectory, I think having that, knowing the broader sense what success is and why you want something can allow you to flow to opportunities that you never imagined would be available to you. And they could actually be better than you ever imagined versus being hyper fixated on a 5-year, 7-year plan. The other thing I just wanted to say as well is that I feel that we don't know, it's not just about wanting something bad enough. Because like going back to my obsession with Tim Jackson Brown, he's not real. Um, we could want something that isn't good for us and just we're really hyper fixated on something, but we've grown, right? I'm not in high school anymore. I don't want to be with a high school with the guy who he was in high school. I've changed. So it's okay also for as we grow, as we learn to love ourselves and be more compassionate with ourselves and continue to be ambitious. It is okay to let go of what 16-year-old Jimmy wanted, of what 25-year-old Jimmy wanted, of what 40-year-old Jimmy wanted, because new technology, new opportunities, new markets, new world. There could be something new that you could get involved in, where you can thrive and flourish that will take you off the trajectory you had committed to. And that's also good.
Okay, so that speaks to me about finding someone's personal values and then trying to align their career path, their career planning with their personal values. And I think in doing that, asking that why question, why I want this. Okay, but why do you want this? What is it that you want? And then trying to structure out, okay, well, I don't necessarily need this. I can get by with this because that's actually what I want. I don't necessarily, so I think that having an opportunity to think about what your personal values are and then aligning your career plan with that would be on the right track. Would you agree with that?
I think that I do agree, although I don't think it's linear either. As we get older, we learn more about ourselves, so I don't think that what, Jimmy wanted at 25 was inherently bad. I was 25, but to know that it's going to be a constant conversation. And so in 10 years time, I have children, I'm married, my desires may change. And then 3 years after, I'm like, okay, they change again. And that's also part of the journey. There's a lot of shame I find with my overachievers around, like, I don't want to be a flip-flopper. I don't want to be wishy-washy. I just want to stick with something and go with it. But the truth is, for a lot of us, that isn't going to be our journey. Just even with how, even technology, like there are things that you are going to be able to do as a profession with your 20 years experience in biotech that do not exist right now and only exist in someone's imagination right now. But in 5 years, your experience, your 25 years in biotech are going to be invaluable, making that thing happen. And we don't know what it is. So many of us, even us mid-career people, we are still advancing towards careers that do not exist. So having that reality, like having a 10-year plan is great. But honestly, I think the bigger thing is it's that continually knowing who you are and knowing that whatever detour shifts or movements you take, trust yourself that you will get yourself out to the other side to a better destination. And the truth is, most people aren't going to understand. I left being a COO. I left management consulting. I left some really big brands to make a documentary movie, to crowdfund a documentary film. And now we're doing major projects in some corporate multinational. That wasn't a linear plan. It wasn't like there was I will do this, or do that, we'll do this. We didn't know what would be on the other side, but we knew it was untested territory that we wanted to explore and create something. And we weren't even sure what we were creating. And there is that piece around, for many of us overachievers, especially people who may not go into the front door is not going to be the safest way for us. It may be trying to find other avenues. So I think for me, it's embracing. I think it's good to have a plan. We talk about career holistic plan, but and to have values. But as we get older, we become incredibly more honest with ourselves. I started swearing when I turned 42. And I'm just, because you haven't, I haven't. But I started swearing at 42 because I realized, it's easier. It communicates a lot more easily for me when I'm able to do that. But I've become a lot more comfortable in being myself. I only imagine when I turn 60, I may just swear all the time. I may just completely make sentences full of swearing. And who else knows what I'll be doing? But because I recognize that doesn't take away from my ability to have the life I want and to have the impact I want in my profession. But when I was younger, I I just wasn't there yet. So I do think there's going to always be that continual unfolding, and especially for many of us who've internalized so many toxic messages about what we can't do, about who we are, about how smart we are, about wanting too much, about always being wrong. That may take a while to unlearn.
So speaking of the future, right now, seemingly you're working with individuals. What is the jump for you to make to start working with companies to reorganize and have that individual work that you're doing on a company basis so that everybody in that company can get the benefit of the individual practice that you have?
We had been working with companies for 2 years, Chris. We've just made the switch to individuals. But we
Okay.
had started working with multinationals. We still have a handful of multinational clients, especially in pharmaceuticals. We do quite a bit of work in pharmaceuticals and in engineering spaces. Why we made the switch, for a lot of the conversations we had, not so much with my clients, but as we spoke to a lot of companies, what came up was this discussion for them was around budget. Do we have budget to have you come and talk to, people about what's going on in the workplace? But for underrepresented professionals, this isn't about budget. It's about them being able to stay in the careers they love. This is about their mortgage, their kids' college tuition, their retirement, taking care of their parents, the legacy they want to leave behind for their kids and grandkids. So if you are worried about walking away from a $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year job and going into nothing, this is much more urgent and a much bigger issue than a corporation who's saying, well, do we have $25 to give Arise Firebird to come and show the film? And those are the kind of conversations we've had with companies. So the issue for us is there's a greater urgency with individuals because for them, this is their livelihood. This is all their budget, the totality of their budget. And for a lot of organizations, for various reasons, we're finding, at least for us, this issue about retention of senior and mid-career people in STEM, of traditionally overlooked professionals, so far, just is not that high an issue for them. And when I talk about
go ahead.
And when I talk about traditionally overlooked, yes, that does include women of color, people of color, but that also could include, people's gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, age. It can also be religious. It could be, a working class leader in an upper class leadership team who is not able to stay because they're different. It shows up in so many different ways in terms of people can be overlooked because they're just the wrong fit in an organization. And that person leaves with decades of, engineering experience or risk management experience or, clinical trial experience. They leave and as one woman, she left and joined the circus, literally. So they're not just leaving their employer, they're leaving the entire industry. And they're going and doing something very different.
So when you go into a company organization, how is the atmosphere when you go in versus when you leave? What is the general consensus of how people feel when you get there versus on the exit? Or is it maybe a continual basis? There is no exit.
So for us, we do set projects. For the people we work with, we typically work with traditionally, again, overlooked professionals, but we do some leadership work as well. I think for the people who are going through or who have gone through problematic workspaces, vindication is one. The realization that they're not alone, they're not going crazy. Okay, this isn't just me. I'm not making this up. I'm not overreacting. Even if it's happened 2 or 3 jobs before, some of them haven't really come to terms or even begun to come to terms with what has happened to them. So that's a big part. Secondly, giving them tools to begin to reframe. So like, okay, I can think about this current situation or this previous situation differently. It's okay if this still bothers me, even though my employer is really trying. It's okay if it bothers me. Because again, getting a new job does not mean is not therapy. Your new job is not therapy. It's just a new, and it is a new job. It's a safer environment, but that work still needs to be done. We also recognize, when we work with certain companies, have employee assistance programs and various resources, realizing that they probably need to do a lot more signposting to their staff about the employee resource program, the employee assistance programs they have, because of what the employees are bringing in from other employment areas, or even what's currently going on in their employment. What we find from leaders often largely is just generally a surprise that overwhelmingly that they didn't realize this was still a problem in their company. We do find that consistently.
That
There's just really
that's kind of scary, because that means that either they are purposefully overlooking it, or they are likely part of the problem.
Or somewhere in between. Somewhere in between. It's if you don't experience something, it's easy to not for something not to bother me if I don't have to. For example, what's happening in Australia right now, Chris, with the weather?
I have no idea.
You know?
Mm.
I don't either. Exactly. I don't know. And so, all kinds of horrible stuff. We don't know what could be happening there, but because we aren't engaged, I don't have any friends in Australia right now. I don't have any clients in Australia, so I can just not be involved. The problem is, I think some leaders, and I'm not saying this is all, but I would say for a lot of leaders, it's probably that viewpoint. Well, it's just not I'm not concerned because it has nothing to do with me. And leadership is actually, you have to become concerned and be curious. And so when they watch the Arise Firebird movie, there can be a range of worry that if we show this film, our employees will now start feeling bad because this film will make them feel this way. No, it's making you feel this way because you weren't aware of it. It's not going to make them feel this way because they're experiencing it. So there's that realization that there's a concern that, no, this is going to start something versus actually this is going to expose us to something. So there's just and one of the benefits of the movie wasn't the reason we did the movie, but one of the benefits of the movie has really been for the leaders who watch it, for people who are not living it, to realize, okay, this is the extent to which it really affects people, and this is why you could be struggling with retaining talent, because the business case I would make to any company really is around talent retention in STEM. That you all know, not every STEM field has, but a lot of STEM fields, that right now someone could walk in and take on that, senior mechanical engineering job right up the street. And instead she's working in the circus, learning how to juggle the children. That's where she is. Like, the person that could take it is juggling in the circus right now because she is terrified to come back to work. These are the things that we don't, I guess the ignorance for some people, it's painful. Once you get into it, it's really painful work. And I don't think a lot of companies invest a lot in the mental well-being of their leaders to be able to process that, because leaders are people too. As I have discovered, like 97% of leaders are human beings with a 3% margin of error. And it's a lot for them to take on, like, just to read all the exit interviews. You want leaders we should read every single exit interview that comes out of a company. But some of those exit interviews are nasty. And they're nasty because the people are being brutally honest. I'm leaving now, so I get to tell you, I think you're Satan's twin brother. That's how badly you treated me. And here's my evidence, point one. And they're able to make a coherent case. You're asking a senior executive to read like 200 of those without any backup for how they're going to process that. They're not going to do it. And so they don't do it. And then we're surprised why they don't do it, because the human brain cannot subject itself to unfiltered punishment without anything around self-compassion, anything around how do you come back from that? Because if they're a good leader, and they read all of those kind of things, they'll probably resign. If they're good, because they'll see they're so bad. I can see I'm not great at this job. I need to step away. And someone who has good care will just shut it down. And so I don't think there are enough, at least from my own experience, there isn't enough work being done to increase leadership capacity, to actually consume harsh truths. And they don't really have to. So again, our focus with the people going through it is my clients have to consume harsh truth and harsh lies and all of that so they can earn a living. And so the urgency is and the need for that is with one group is essential. But leaders, like going back to Australia, they can just opt to we'll discuss it next month. We don't have enough time for this quarterly meeting. So we'll put it on next month's agenda. And next month, okay, we'll put it on next quarter's agenda. And that's the end of it.
So, Jimi, if a listener wanted to take one actionable step today to build resilience, to reclaiming their career of joy, what would you recommend?
I would say find a way to give away something that you have, because that will build your confidence. So whether it's mentoring, you don't have to mentor with your employer or a formal mentoring program. Buy coffee to somebody junior at work. Go to your community college and, ask to give a talk to the students, or just have a bike lunch for one of the adjunct professors. Post something on social media, a newsletter. Share some interesting resources with people who are up and coming, because being able to share what you have reminds you of how good you are. Even if your employer, your line manager isn't able to show that to you, you're able to see yourself how good you are by being able to share your skill set with somebody else. And with budgets being slashed here, there, and everywhere, I'm certain you'd be able to find somebody that would value 30 minutes of your time on Zoom.
Do you think that builds a sense of gratitude into their career, their job?
That's interesting. I think it's just it builds for me pressure relief. It probably could build some gratitude, but ultimately, I think for me it can bring back more excitement. Like, oh, actually, I'm good at this. I know what I'm talking about. Oh, I do know what I'm talking about, because some of us may be in places where no matter what you say isn't right. The sky is blue. No, it's not. It is actually turquoise. My car has 4 wheels. No. There's a spare tire. It has 5, and it actually has 7 wheels. And okay, I have a dog. No, you don't have a dog. You have a chicken. And so you're like, that's somehow you're constantly being reminded that you're not good enough. You're not capable. So being able to remind yourself through helping other people. Again, 30 minutes. I'm not saying don't go and quit your job and do this full time, and don't burn yourself out. But finding a short waste. A checklist, some health and safety checklist. Send that to people in your local engineering association, so they can use in the organization. Don't steal company IP. It's stuff that you have curated yourself or you built yourself. So I think it's just enough. It's about, for me, helping regulate oneself, get back into regulation. Because gratitude is a tricky thing. I think gratitude is powerful. However, forced gratitude is hollow. You have to feel great. I feel one has to feel grateful to be grateful. And I think quite often for myself, I was like, well, when I was going through abuse, you should be grateful. Say you're grateful. I look on the bright side, and I did all of that, but that just kept me in abusive situations. Yes, he's beating you. Yes, he takes drugs. But yes, he hits your kids. But he's really nice to your dog. To be grateful that he's nice to your dog. It's true. He is nice to my dog. The last guy did all the same things, and he wasn't nice to my dog. So it's that balance of just being able to connect back to who you are, feeling really good about yourself because you're you're good at what you do, and you reminded yourself and you've helped somebody else. Hopefully, the feeling of genuine gratitude should bubble up.
Well, Jimi, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, the empowering tools that you left us with today. And before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or key takeaways you'd like to leave our audience with?
final thought for me is a couple things. I do have an ebook on how to find peace and joy at work. If your employer can't change, it does talk about my program, but even if you don't want to work with me, it does go through the things I've talked about in detail with some actionable exercises. So they should be your listeners should be able to run with that and have something to run with, even if they never reach out to me again. It's totally cool. But the final thing I want to end on is dignity. Competency is not a requirement for dignity. Go back to Jimmy International Chicken Shack. I don't have the right to slap the server for it to be improvement. And so bringing it back to the workplace is you don't have to be the best at what you do to be treated with dignity and respect at work. Competency is not a requirement for respect. And so if you're in a situation where you're thinking, if I can only be the best, or outperform, hit all my targets, then I can ask my employer to treat me well. I just want to ask you to give yourself a break and be kind to yourself, because you're already doing probably much better than you think, and you don't need an employer. You don't need to be good. Someone slapped that 18-year-old server, they would call the police. The whole might of Chicken Shack International would come behind and support that server against that employee and against that customer, because that isn't okay. And it just isn't okay. So please do take care of yourself. And if you're really, really struggling with, intrusive thoughts, you can't sleep, you're worried, please get professional help. Forget the ebook. Really do go and get professional help. There's no need there are no prizes for this. Get the help you need, get the medication you need, the medical support that you need, so that you can be around, because we need you here in this world in whatever capacity you're in.
Well, Jimmy, again, thank you. And I'll be sure to leave the links for your information in the show notes. And listeners, remember, building resilience and reclaiming your joy in your career is possible. And you can find more of Jimmy's work at the link in the show notes and dive into the Firebird Resilience Program. As always, thanks for tuning in to the Prestigious Initiative. Until next time, stay focused and keep striving for greatness.